Welcome to the Advocis Podcast. We are kicking off the 2026 podcast lineup with the hot topic, including an important twist. This is a very relevant conversation that I think most advisors in Canada have been circling around for the past couple of years. And that is the responsible use of technology, including AI, in your practice. I'm joined today by a fantastic panel of Advocis community members and volunteers from across Canada. Al Jabri and Jesse Vu are financial advisors with tech-savvy early adoption habits who have been and are actively using AI in their practices. Angelina Hung from Financial Tech Tools is with us. She brings deep industry expertise and very broad community connection to our conversation today. We would not do our listeners justice if we did not include a really important perspective in this conversation. Jack Mazakian is here from Advocis Broker Services, the E&O provider for many Advocis members across Canada, to give us the risk and liability perspective that too many of these conversations are skipping over. And our session sponsor is Continuum. Co-founder Alex Dashevsky brings the AI technology perspective with their homegrown, Canadian-based, built specifically for financial advisors, AI workspace for client servicing. And I'm Kelly Gustafson, your host for this session. My team and I work with hundreds of firms from across Canada to modernize their practices, transform their technology, and we specialize in implementation and training for advisors and their teams. So, what do we already know? Technology and artificial intelligence are, at a minimum, contemplated in advisors' practices every day. For some, it's completely embedded in how client experience is created and how advice is delivered. Advisors are under pressure from every direction: client expectations, general business modernization, laws and regulatory complexity, data and information management, efficiency demands, capacity constraints, change fatigue. Remember when the question was, will advisors use technology? The question that really needs to be addressed is, how do advisors do so responsibly and strategically? AI adoption pressure is real. It's heavy, it's fast, but speed without governance creates risk. Using AI is easy, using it within the legal and regulatory compliance guardrails. That's what we're going to address. What I want to do is now dive into this panel because I think there's a moment that every one of you has reached. So let me ask you, tell me the first time you used an AI tool and thought, this changes everything. What were you doing? What did it make you feel? What was that turning point moment? And we're starting with Al Jabri. Welcome, Al.
I had two of those instances actually. The first instance was about a month after ChatGPT came on. I think I'm an early adopter, but I was a month late from launch day, right? So somebody had said to me, have you used ChatGPT yet? And I said, oh, I've heard about it, but I haven't used it yet. And I remember it was late. I was in my garage workshop and I was at standing desk and I typed in my first, prompt and it wasn't a prompt. I didn't know what a prompt was yet, but I talked to this machine and it spoke back to me cogently. And I was like blown away. I remember distinctly goosebumps, and don't laugh at me, actual tear. Okay. Like, this is another level. That quickly faded. Okay. I got to be straight with you. Weeks into it, this thing's pretty silly, stupid, if you don't mind me being going too far here. It's a great tool, but then I realized that there are many limitations. But just a few weeks ago, and so today's late Feb, we're recording this. A few weeks ago, I got on to a tool called Claude Cowork, which a lot of people will have heard about by now. That was the second time I had that feeling, which is now the AI that I'm interacting with that still is cogent can actually take action on my behalf. And now I can see really where the future goes. We've read about it. I hear people talk about it, but I got to feel what it looked like for an AI to take control of my computer and take an action for me. So a while ago and just recently.
Jesse, I know You are an early adopter, and I've witnessed your use of technology, including AI. Tell us about your moments.
So interesting enough, I didn't actually realize I was using AI for a very long time. I think that I think the early versions of AI that we're using is more about just lo- locating data that we would normally look for manually. So I'm gonna have kind of like a more boring experience than Al's, but um, I recently sat down and we've been recording all of our client meetings since every time I could remember to record, because there are times when I forget. And uh, when I went to BAM school last year, we were told, like, if we're going to do anything with client data, make sure that it's offsite. So, of course, I went out and spent a ridiculous amount of money to go get this local language model set up on my computer because it was going to make me so efficient. And instead, I spent 3 months trying to get this thing to do what it was supposed to do. And most of the time, it didn't do what I thought it was going to do. So I was learning all this stuff. But eventually, I realized that a lot of the programs I was using had AI integrated in it. And one of the things about running a business is if you want to duplicate something or you want to reduce the amount of errors, you should have a process. And you often think you have a good process, but until somebody checks your process, that's not you. You realize that maybe your process is not as processed as it is. And we sat down and we went through a lot of our recordings and we put it into and we essentially asked the AI just a question: what was this meeting about? That's it. That was the only prompt I put in there when it was listening to the recording. And when it spit that stuff out, I was like, holy smokes, I talk about a lot of things in a meeting, even though my agenda says I only say talk about three things besides we're going through. So my first revelation was, wow, I understand now why sometimes people get so excited about the things we talk about in the meeting, but they have a really hard time with executing. Our clients have a hard time executing. So that really actually helped us because then we're like, what is this meeting about? And then we really try to stick to those points. And then now we're listening back and going at the end of every meeting, asking, what is this meeting about? And the computer is telling us whether or not our meeting was actually about the thing it was about. And that's been really helpful.
That's really cool. What I am interested in coming back to is in a question later on is some of those mistakes you made as advisors and as advocates for advisors that have some influence here. Because if we can influence our community in not making those same mistakes because they might be a liability or a big waste of time, I think that's really important. So let's move to Angelina. Angelina, what about you? Your aha AI moment.
Well, okay, so the first time I actually start using AI was like when my friend like introduced me to, my new BFF Chat GPT, the OG of LLMs, right? So what really got to me was like first thing was like I'm not as articulate as I would like to be. So just asking it just to make me sound a little bit more clear, making my like really elevating my communication. That was one of the moments. And then more importantly was when I started using it to explain like concepts and stuff like that. I'd love to say, yeah, explain it to me like I'm in university level, but the truth of the matter is, it's like I asked it to explain it to me like I was like in grade 5 or grade 6. Um, because, like that's kind of the level I'm operating at, grade 5, grade 6 level. Um, so I that was probably like my first aha sort of like moment. And then similar to Al, it's the next one, not necessarily with Claude Cowork per se, because just I was just playing around with it like I want to say like earlier last week or maybe the week before, and uh, in one evening I already busted through all my tokens, so creating a bunch of workflows and stuff. So I think that's my next aha moment. Just like Al, like really it's about a bunch of like different like like setting up like different like agentic workflows and such to save time to put it but when you're building these things out um you have to have some guardrails in place. And then I guess one of the last aha moments I had was uh, building out my avatar. So if anybody goes on my LinkedIn, okay, um, Avatar Ange is so much more articulate and gets rid of all the ums and ahs than actual real life me. Building that out was probably another aha moment for me was just taking that avatar and having it explain out like 20-30 second clips of like this is how this works, this is how this works, this is some of the content that we're creating for advisors. I would say that. But if I ever call you, like saying like, "Hey, that Nigerian prince I know needs some money," that's not me. That's my avatar. So yeah, those are kind of like the three moments. Yeah, the explaining things to me like I'm in grade 6. Okay, let's be honest. Maybe sometimes grade 5. Um, the piece about the piece about the agentic workflows, and then the avatar.
I want to move on to the productivity promise of AI. Knowing what you know about this profession and the work that it takes to serve clients. Al, I'm going to start with you. If AI delivers on what it's promising, what does your practice look like in 2 years?
If AI delivers on what it's promising, Kelly, we'll have a lot more opportunity to be with our clients and actually engage with them and bring back the human component, or not just bring it back, I should say, maintain it, keep it, expand it. What's happened is that advisors are drowning in administrative work and burden and compliance. And I say that not in a derogatory way. It is necessary. A lot of it is necessary. So we need to maintain it, but we need to bring that efficiency in. So I think AI will allow us to be efficient in how we handle those requirements that are necessary in most cases, and buy back 20 hours a week so that we can do the things that we love, why we came into this profession, be noble like Jesse and serve people and make a difference and do that. And so in 2 years, it looks like a practice that you probably thought you were getting into when you quickly found out it wasn't what you thought you were getting into.
Absolutely. So can you be more specific? What work disappears from your plate?
I'll speak from an advisor's perspective. I still have a practice. I have clients that I care for. But from an advisor's perspective, and the problem we're solving is the necessary work that we just mentioned. So the meeting notes, for example, the background, the quantification of how we came to a recommendation. Now you got to think about this. An advisor, and I think for any advisor who's been doing this for quite some time, you sit down with a client, and within that discovery meeting, you've pretty much got pegged what they need, how to help them, all of the different things. You've got a rough idea of numbers because you've engaged with so many people. And now you have to quantify everything. You have to put it down on paper. You have to note it and all that good stuff. So I think all of that, everything between the first 10% is what we need advisors for, and the last 10% is what we need advisors for. And AI is going to do this middle 80%. So the note taking, the summarizing, the first drafting. And we're really using our AI like an exceptional intern. So I assume the quality is going to be great, but I verify every single thing before it goes out to a client. But that saved us an exceptional amount of time. So I think at a minimum for today, it is about note taking, summarizing, drafting, organizing, filing, all of these redundant tasks.
Okay, I'm going to go right to you, Alex, because you are the one making the promises on behalf of AI. From your perspective, what work disappears? Are you aligned with what Al is saying here? What are they going to be spending? What are these advisors going to be spending more time on because of your promises?
Absolutely. Well, I completely agree with Al. A lot of the admin tasks, are already being, we're in a position to cut them down, 90% already. So note taking, one of the things that we do, is just the tip of the spear on the type of work that we can begin to automate. But the world gets more exciting from there. The promise of, Al mentioned Claude Cowork, which is doing work for you. Obviously, it's not designed specifically for financial advisors and probably never will be. But one of the reasons that we decided to be a desktop app from day one was that was a similar vision where we can start executing the work alongside the advisor. And so one of the things that I'm very excited about, even just from, again, coming at this from the client perspective, is that advisors' roles are evolving. They're becoming what we like to call the quarterback. They're not just, investing assets or providing singular points of advice. They sit across your financial life and provide more holistic guidance that everyone in Canada or any person on the planet would love to have. And so while that wasn't a scalable problem maybe 10 years ago, today with AI, that's extremely scalable. And so exactly like Al said, it's like having an intern, which allows you to focus on the human side of the business and really be the quarterback for your clients.
Angelina, you provide a lot of services to advisors across Canada when it comes to their public persona, their website, social media, posting, all that kind of stuff. You develop a lot of great content that is really meaningful for clients. From your perspective, what is the difference that you're going to see in your business that influences so many advisors' businesses across Canada?
Thanks, Kelly. Like, we spent a lot of time on what we call like the attract side, the marketing side of the business for advisors, right? Where it's gonna really help things like things such as like refining your messages, honing in on who you're working with. We talk a lot about like niche. There's coaches out there that talk about niche marketing. You can actually dial that in now. Like who are and get very targeted on who you're after. So maybe it's just specifically like you're working with like medical professionals. You know, what are their problems? Talk about what their problems are. What are the solutions? But you can get so niche down. You can provide that, you can provide content that's specific to those individuals. I talked a little bit about the avatar. The avatar can help with like, feeling a little bit more personal, but not straight. Like it's like, but make it still sound a little bit like you, but it can still have like you can talk directly to that client. So like that's where AI is going to really help is with communication and improving things such as ad copy on your website, copy like for your content, your presentations. I mean, we've already seen AI generated presentations. uh PowerPoint presentations. I think actually on one of the on update, I think it was last year, Al, that you talked about one of the softwares that you use. Um, so I think like that's one, right? But really, in a couple years from now, you're gonna see. I call it the cyborg advisor. Um, so if you're a Marvel fan, if you remember Cyborg, sorry, no, I'm getting all my comic books mixed up. If you're a DC fan, Cyborg was the guy. He's half human, half robot. And if you're a Marvel fan, Iron Man, right? So Tony Stark, right? Now with AI, you've got kind of like a tool to help you with all of these things. The other thing that I see really, um, we always talk about uh, the not getting enough advisors coming back into our industry. We've got that, bringing in. I think AI helps with, um, you know, leveling the playing field with that. So things such as like having access to those tools, regardless of because starting a business is expensive. Advisors, I hear about this. Starting a business is expensive, but with AI, it has leveled things out. Like access to knowledge, for one thing, access to like different workflows, even tools like Continuum, Chat GPT, Copilot. I looked at Copilot and what it could do. Years ago, I used to create like spreadsheets. Like that was like part of my job. I used to work in MGAs and creating so many spreadsheets, calculating out like capital dividend account. If anybody remembers that old 10897 sort of concept, IFAs, all that sort of stuff. I feel like I spent I don't want to say years, but weeks of my life creating these spreadsheets. So when I saw Copilot just creating some of this stuff, how to calculate, like, net present cash value, I almost cried because I'm like, oh my gosh, my life. That was so just, I really do think AI's leveled out that playing field for so many, not just, brand new advisors, more, senior advisors, things that like where like it would cost time and money. It is, you know, it has made things a whole, like that barrier is so much easier.
Al, go ahead. You have a comment?
Thank you, thank you. I was gonna say it's just so timely from what Angelina said, and so there is this really cool effect where it's an equalizer because what used to cost a lot, so now an individual can have the same infrastructure as an institution, and that's pretty darn cool if you know how to set it up. Okay, but if you don't, and if you're unwilling, then I we did a whole thing on the Toronto conference last year about AI being an amplifier. And if you can think about it, now we're all financial professionals here, so if you think about that growing wealth gap, AI could also be an amplifier of the gap for those who adopt versus those who don't. And if you adopt and adopt well, you're going to start doing that hockey stick growth that Jack talked about. And if for those that aren't, it's kind of scary. You know what happens quickly, the gap starts to increase. And so I would call it an amplifier versus an equalizer from that side of things. So I wanted to stand on the shoulders of what Angelina said there.
I think you made a really, really, really important point related to the younger generation coming into this industry. And Al and Angelina too, highlighting the fact that the gap that is being created is gaining momentum. So if you are experimenting with AI, if you are engaged with technology, if you are taking advantage of those tools like the one that Alex provides, and you're learning the literacy skills and you're becoming more proactive, you're going to remain relevant. If you're not, it's like the reverse of compound interest. You're getting further and further and further behind everybody else. And the people that are on this panel, we brought you on here because this kind of influence is so critical for our community for two perspectives. One, encouraging people to start engaging responsibly with technology, including AI, is critical. It's so important. But two, how exciting is it for us, including technology like Alex, to represent a more modern version of what financial services looks like and to attract a younger generation, to actually be attractive to a younger generation? Because traditionally we're so cumbersome and disjointed and siloed and paper-based. And there's no Gen X's and beyond that are attracted to that. So I think that's a really, really important point, Angelina, too, and important for our community to get out there and find those people to attract, especially when we've got fantastic technology. So I am hearing Jessie talk about workflow optimization and experimenting with making sure she's honing in her processes, leveraging technology to do that. I'm hearing Al talk about just the client experience and gaining capacity in certain areas. I'm hearing Angelina talk about that cognitive load and having to spend weeks into spreadsheets that now take 30 seconds if you know how to prompt properly. So I want to come back to something that we had alluded to and make sure our answers are concise here, you guys. What didn't work? What advice can we give to people that might not have worked when we were trying something so that we can help them avoid mistakes, problems, or liabilities? Let's start with you, Ganal.
I'll come at what didn't work from a couple of. I'll go one or two perspectives. So the first perspective is, what doesn't work is trying to get it right the first time around, but just get on and just play. Okay. So I think I spent a lot of time that I didn't need to spend trying to optimize, only to learn what Angelina talked about very early on, which was I hit a token limit. Like I had this really big. So for anybody who doesn't know, a token is just kind of like the memory of the AI that you're chatting with. And if you invest too much inside of one conversation, it just starts to forget and it reaches a limit and then the conversation's over, really. And so I've invested numerous iterations and times and hours into creating this in-depth conversation only for it to fail. So play with it, learn its limits, learn your limits, and that'll reduce the kind of failure, the impact of failure. Okay, so then we hear about embracing failure. Well, in this case, play with as much as you can and embrace all of them, and then take the win at the end of it all. I'll leave it at that, Kelly. I think that's a good place for people to just get out there and play in the sandbox and give yourself permission and mess it up. That's the thing I would say.
Love it. Love it. Yes. So when an advisor, Jack, uses AI to generate client-facing content, summaries, recommendations, planning scenarios, where does liability land if something goes wrong? Is this treated differently than traditional advisor errors?
Well, it's interesting actually. The words that come into my mind about AI, and this I've noticed this, in the various interactions that we've had with ChatGPT and various other AI models, is that it comes across incredibly confident. So because it's confident, you sort of say, well, it must know better than what I think. But it, just as an analogy, if I can just, this is what I was going to say. There was a YouTube video that I watched about something really unique, and it was, this individual was asking a question of the AI, whatever it was, how long did it take for the first Yankee Stadium to be built? And the answer that came out almost instantaneously is 2 years. And you go, okay, well, that doesn't make any sense. That this was in early 1900s. The amount of concrete alone that was needed for that whole building could not be done in 2 years, especially with the horse and carriages that they had at the time. So it was quite an inquisitive questioning. After about 20 questions, again, very confidently, the AI came back and said, well, I guess my answer was wrong. And you think, wow, that's incredible. So we have to be really aware that's almost like a hostile friend, and you have to be careful to fight it and really be brave about it and say, okay, I get it, but you know what? We have to sort of look down the other way, and that's what we hope our advisor doing with these new tools is that, ultimately we will protect you. If you get it wrong, that's the way it goes. But you need to learn from it too and say, okay, if I'm using this in one case and it's not working, then I need to pivot really quickly and move in a different direction. And that's what any kind of professional would do anyways. So if you had someone hunting after one of your big clients and they come in and they do this great proposal, and your client is good enough to say, well, take a look at this. This is what, Jane came in and presented to me. I think it's a lot better than what you're offering. Well, you can actually, challenge each one of those points. And I've done this in my career where, what you ultimately have to do is remind your client that all of these points, in many cases, we already went through all these points. You didn't want to go down these paths. So we're going in the direction of what you've told us to get to. And that may be a great plan, but you've given us direction that way. So it's those kinds of things that I guess what I'm doing is I'm weaving a little bit into the equation, what my experience has been as a professional, and what I hope to be able to extend some of that to is if advisors generally can take that and use it, as simple as note taking and verify those notes, listen to them and then just go through them and just double check them. But ultimately, that's going to be the biggest test. When something goes wrong, it's those notes that your client may not have that you will have, and the court's going to say, that's what I need to show. Kelly, did I answer your question?
Yeah, actually, it's also a great segue into what I'm going to ask for from Alex next, because if we start to, so we know what some of those risks are. Al talked about them, Jesse talked about them, Angelina talked about them, Jack, you've talked about them. And along with those, risks and liabilities of putting private client information into systems or having AI drift or hallucinate or not provide factual information or fulsome information because it doesn't have context. It doesn't have trained life experience. For example, that's stuff you need to put into a system from a human perspective, like your own parameters. If you're going to generate output, it's easier to generate relevant contextual output for your clients when you include information about your business, like your licenses, your jurisdictions, the laws you have to follow, the regulators that need to be included in the prompting. So, Alex, this is a great time for you to talk about from the perspective of trying to build responsible AI that is very niche in Canadian financial services. How do you address that to help support advisors?
Great question. As Al mentioned before, one of the common experiences that anyone who's used AI has probably run into is they're having a conversation, and over time, that AI is tired by the end of it. You've run your limit on tokens, or it's starting to lose context. And in the advisory space specifically, you don't want to be having your AI model trained on client information. It's a big no-no. And so our approach is to do this in a completely responsible way. And so what we do is no PII is allowed to be trained by the models, but context is key. And so the way that our software continuum works is it has access to the context that's necessary to generate really good replies. And so it has access to your interaction history, all of the meetings you've had with clients. It has access to your email and access to understanding who you are as an advisor. And so those ingredients, every time that you interact with Continuum, are being fetched each time independently, scrubbed from PII and stored in Canada. And so we're, as far as I know, the only ones who have put up these guardrails to make the experience for advisors a safe one. And so security and compliance here is of utmost importance, and advisors need to know the risks of when they're uploading information up directly to ChatGPT. That's not a great way to be protecting their clients and their practice.
Anyone else have some really valuable tips around guardrails for advisors and what they need to make sure they're doing when evaluating technology and when using it in certain scenarios? Jesse, your story was great. So let's go back to Angelina. Do you have or have you seen anything that might have been at risk that now has led to making sure that guardrails are implemented?
I think we need to look at like the data set the AI is training off of. So, I mean, anybody can put anything out on the internet now, and so if your AI model is training off that data, that's going to be, well, it could be correct or it could be incorrect, right? You still need that human in the loop, but I think the big thing is just making sure whatever the data set it's using is accurate, it's correct. I always tell advisors whenever they're using AI, when it comes to looking up information, is going back and give me the source link. Tell me like where you're getting this information from, because it needs to come from a reliable source. If you haven't, if you haven't created your own data set, and I'm assuming maybe a lot of people have not, that's gonna be a problem, right? Because it could be pulling stuff out from, you know, any old website that's been created. So I think that, and I've seen that, like, even like Jack talked about the hallucinations, Jesse talked about the hallucinations. I mean, just even something as basic as like, what's the TFSA limit for 2026? Well, AI told me it was $9,500. Uh, that's not correct. So I would say that's, and I've seen some of this stuff, right? Um, I also know, like, like there's a lot of financial influencers out there as well. Um, just the same, like, and I can see some nods on there, right? Some may be accredited with designations and fully qualified, and some might not be, right? So just all that information is out there floating, right? But it's important to make sure your data set, where you're getting that information from, regardless if it's from AI, through AI or not. That's got to be built straight into your process.
Yeah, have you noticed the language, the common language and the common AI themes and the way things are phrased and said? Everybody sounds the same. AI is literally training humans on how to talk now. It's not the other way around. It's crazy. Talk about the biggest influencer in financial services. It is AI right now. And that's not a good thing because advisors spend so much time educating themselves and working with real client experiences that AI has no context around, which is another reason why I like Continuum because it actually draws context in and you can program guardrails in. So, what do you feel like when it comes to AI tools? Um, if an advisor does not know what happens to the information when it's put into an AI tool, like that data set you were just talking about, and Jesse, like your information, do you think an advisor is ready to use that tool? Like, are you ready to use an AI tool if you don't know where the information goes? Al, how about you?
Kelly, I think there's the responsible answer, and there's the answer that people want to kind of follow. If you don't know where it goes, you probably shouldn't be using it. I think that goes, I mean, it needs to be said, so we'll say it. Simultaneously, I'm going to speak out of both sides of my mouth here. Sometimes we, you get a new device and it says acknowledgement, Apple acknowledgement, and there's 70-page scrolling, just click OK. That's probably what's happening. So you want to use vetted tools, trust, our institution, trust Advocis. Things have been vetted. So if they're bringing you something, that's a good thing. Angelina's on the board there, the technology committee, right? So then there's that vetted solutions. So be very careful what goes out there. And then don't be afraid to explore, because that very thing, when we say, hey, watch out, it's also going to be the very thing that allows some advisors to say, well, look, I can't touch it yet. And that's going to be a problem for our industry, for clients, for everybody. So there needs to be a balance. And I would encourage and urge everybody on this call and everybody that's listening. It's like, okay, do your homework, do your due diligence, and then go out there, be bold and be brave and push the envelope a little bit for your own practice, for your clients, for everybody. Just be responsible about it.
If I can just offer a couple of points that I think we have to be also cognizant of, is legal and regulatory obligations that are going to come very, very quickly. So I would embrace your compliance team and your legal team and your MGAs to start really thinking about where the regulators are going to come and what they're going to do, and get prepared, because they look at this as the Wild West. And ultimately, the way I viewed regulators is that almost looking at them backwards. And what I mean is, what is their ultimate outcome that they're looking for? It's the protection of the citizens of Canada. So how do we protect them from this tool or anything else? And that's where the legal teams and the compliance teams will help you put those safeguards and guardrails in place, and ultimately prevent, bad things from happening. So I just wanted to offer that.
Yeah, that is a little further down in this conversation. However, it's a great segue again into what we really need to be making sure the listeners are understanding here. And Al, you had said it very well. One of those things, because it is like the Wild West out here right now, one of those things is how you use technology and what information you put in it. Because you can be as Wild West as you want, as long as it doesn't include information that has personally identifying information about your clients. So if it has specifics about your clients, it should not be going into these systems. You guys know that you have an obligation to proficiency, right? You have continuing education credits to maintain your licenses. Your obligation extends to the technology that you're using and the decisions that you're making. You need to be responsible because that's what you've committed to. So There is a proficiency when it comes to your financial information that you're delivering. There's a proficiency to the technology that you're using in your practice, and more importantly, how you're using it. So Jack, I want to come back to you for a second. What happens when an advisor uses a tool that processes client data in ways that they don't fully understand? Is ignorance ever a defense? Or is this increasing their exposure?
No, it's increasing the exposure. And if you do it more than a number of times, you're going to have insurance companies not wanting to insure you. And then all of a sudden you lose your license. So you just have to be really cognizant of that. It's okay to make a mistake, but if you consistently are making that mistake, if your whole portfolio is following that whole profile, it's kind of like a number of years ago, there was individuals who thought leverage was the best thing in since sliced bread, and all of their portfolio was leverage. And you go, okay, that's good, but you got to have balance. And if something goes wrong, then things can really go sideways. I've had clients where, because of leverage, for example, they've lost their practice, they've lost their whole personality, who they were in the community, because it went too far. So you just have to balance it. As I said earlier, you need to follow, what's happening in the peripherals and the flanks. Watch your flanks, and in the flanks are the regulators, and your legal teams and so forth. They're ultimately going to be providing that support. We're sort of more reactive. We're offering this kind of risk management. I have seminars and so forth that I offer, chapters, and also some of my clients and so forth. What we're trying to help you is just remind you of how the things that you need to do, and don't get yourself into harm's way if you don't need to. If you need help, call on us. We'll help you through the situation, whatever the loss is. So it is something that is very tough to go through. Going through an E&O loss, it's not easy, and it also challenges your professionalism and who you are. But generally, I think that you should be very mindful that we're here, that we're going to be helping you. We're one of the few organizations offering an agnostic type of view. We're not supported by any of the partners out there. In particular, we report just to you, the advisor, and what we create and the policies that you have, you put in your back pocket, and it protects your interests. So that's unique in the marketplace. Some companies that are have really tight control over their agents. They say you can only buy this product. We're agnostic to all MGAs and all advisors. As long as you have your licensing in place, we're there to protect you, and we'll work with you depending on what the situation is.
Do you know what I think is really important, Jack, is like putting some of the meat on the bones. Let's take Jessie's example or like the example she gave about putting her own money at risk in a scenario where AI was giving her some advice. So let's say that was a real client and that complaint landed on your desk. What would you need to see from an E&O provider perspective that would help the advisor? Because I think part of preparation here isn't just that we're given a bunch of words for people to listen to on this podcast, but what are the actions they could potentially take to save them from any sort of E&O claim? Walk us through that a little bit. I think we're all on our edge of our seats for this one.
Sure. So you've got a claim. It's you've used AI. You may or may not have done your diligence. It could be a small claim. It could be a big claim. It really depends on what's happening in your portfolio. Everything's going to be investigated. So the insurance company our insurance company on your behalf is going to, go through the material and identify where things went wrong. And ultimately, either you pay the full amount that's been demanded against you, or negotiated and the settlement is decided, depending on what transpires. But from my perspective, from an underwriting perspective, because we wear two hats, we're your broker and we're also your underwriter. We view it as, okay, what did you learn? So next year you get another claim, same idea. And then I'm going to say, well, what's going on? Why haven't you learned from what's gone on and changed your profile or improved or provided more diligence and so forth? It's those kinds of stories. And eventually you get to a point, if you have more than a number of claims in the same kind of scenario, we may not be able to insure you. The marketplace won't be able to insure you. And then you're going to be in a distress situation. And our cheapest price in the marketplace today is $350. But if you're in the open market, you may pay double, triple, quadruple. Your deductibles may go through the marketplace significantly too. Right now we have zero deductible for life insurance. It could be $1,000, it could be $5,000, $10,000. All of a sudden you're in a different kind of situation where your business is now being harmed. Your financial statements, your balance sheet is being injured because of a model that isn't working. So you have to look at it that way from a very pragmatic perspective. You have to make sure you're taking care of your customers for sure. But if it's not working one time, two times, three times, you got to change the model and adjust it and bring in more diligence. And that's why I said earlier, you need to sort of reach out to compliance and legal so that you can get those tools to be able to help you. And there's also outside individuals that are very, very proficient in providing you with that kind of guidance. Alternatively, what I've also seen with a financial advisor that I know very, very, very well, and what he's done is gone the route of, well, let's go the most highest level of compliance and work from there backwards. And they've just run their business that way. So I think that's what the reality. It's a very soft, nuanced type of situation. But once you have a claim, the next year we have to report it to the insurance company, and the insurance company will then have to assess: is this something that is just a mistake that's happened, which is great, fine, we'll pay it. That's why we're here. Or is there something more systemic that we have to be concerned about? And that's something that comes out in the information that we learn. So that's my perspective and how I look at it with my two hats.
There's a very proactive approach that we can take as advisors because you have privacy and disclosure obligations. So making sure that if you're using AI, how you're using AI is documented, making sure you have disclaimers and making sure that you are asking for consent. All of those things are great things to make sure are part of your documentation process. Also, protocols and team training. How are you using AI? How are you not using AI? What are the standard operating procedures around those? And then ensuring everyone on your team who may or may not be using AI but needs the training anyway in case they do. All important. Al, is there a comment that you'd like to make?
Yeah, right on the shoulders of that or on the heels of that, it is oftentimes what's happening is, if you were to reach out to a regulator right now, or perhaps your insurance company and say, hey, what is an acceptable use of AI? We're probably not going to get an answer that gives us any guardrails. So it's almost a reactionary. It's we'll let you know when you've crossed the line kind of situation. And so that's difficult for advisors. And so what we're doing as a firm is building some governance structures and procedures and protocols, as you said, Kelly. So if we look back, okay, so as an MGA, what carriers want to see, what regulators want to see is, how do you screen advisors? How do you monitor advisors? What's your contracting process? What are all those things that you do? And so we are doing a very similar thing with AI. Here's our governance. Here's our guidance. Here's how you can use it. Here are all the things that you need to be doing. And so that's a bit of a heavy lift for an individual advisor. So this is where you can collaborate. This is where you can plug into a firm or engage with. And for anybody who's interested, just reach out. You can find us on LinkedIn. I'm happy to share. That's what this community is for. So engage with your chapter, engage with people, and just ask what others are doing. But for sure, put in a governance structure and process and procedures as a policy.
Super valuable. Anybody else have any final comments before I wrap this up? Nope. Okay. We have covered a lot of ground today, and I want to close by connecting the dots. AI is going to keep getting better, keep getting faster, and far more capable. This is not slowing down. The advisors who thrive through the transition will be the ones who pair technology, adoption with governance, like Al said, documentation, and professional accountability early on in the process, which is now for everybody. The practice that are excelling right now understand their tools before they deploy them. They keep human judgment at the center of every client interaction, document their processes. They lean into the professional standards and community that exists to support them, because no advisor should be figuring this out in isolation. Advisors who lead with intention are better positioned to adopt as tools evolved. Leading with intention means knowing your obligations, understanding your tools, and being part of a profession that holds itself accountable. So, thank you to Al, Angelina, Jesse, Jack, and Alex. We have a big panel today for being a part of this conversation. Thank you to Continuum for sponsoring this session, and to everybody listening. Subscribe to the Advocis Podcast. Visit advocis.ca for resources. And if you have any questions about your E&O coverage or how technology risk fits into your practice, reach out to ABS, Jack at Advocis Broker Services directly. The links are in the show notes. Stay connected, stay current, stay accountable to the standards that make this profession worth being a part of. Thanks for listening, everyone.